this fall series of healing conversations. I'm Loren Gailey, and I'm so happy you could join us. These healing conversations will inspire, uplift, and empower your life. Listen in to the 24 great speakers this season. For MP3s and transcripts, please visit acoustichealth.com and click on Radio Show. Sit back and journey with us in this healing conversation. This is show number 15 in the fall 2012 series. Today we are going to be talking about the great shift of the ages that is well underway and about how the earth is changing and activating at specific spots on the planet and new spots on the planet. My guest today is James Tyberron, Earth Keeper and channel for Archangel Metatron. Now, James Tyberron is another fine example of how science is meeting spirituality. Tyberron was a geologist and engineer for 33 years. He served in the military. He calls himself a closet metaphysical person when he was working overseas for 30 years as a geologist and engineer, and he's truly a citizen of the world. We're going to learn about his awakening and his rather quick coming to the forefront as a channel of Archangel Metatron. He's been channeling Metatron since 2007, and he's the author of many books which discuss telluric energies, global grids, portals, vortices, and ley lines of many sacred sites around the planet. Welcome, James Tyberron, to Healing Conversations.
Thank you very much. It's a real pleasure and an honor to be here today.
It is amazing that you call yourself a closet metaphysicist because you were around the world and you said you were not watching television.
The term closet metaphysician is no longer applicable. I'm definitely out there now. For 33 years, I worked as an engineer and geologist, and so often during that time, I thought I had my spiritual awakening, I should say, in 1978 when I was living in Brazil. Up until that time, I had been a spiritual person, but not a metaphysical person. I was raised as a Baptist and grew up in Arkansas. My father was a deacon in the Baptist church. My grandfather was a minister in the Baptist church. And so I was always a spiritual person, but never quite able to embrace some of the doctrines and dogmas of what had been taught to me. And in 1978, I was working on the banks of the Amazon River, and a German man gave me a book called There Is a River, which is a biography of Edgar Cayce written by Thomas Suger. And I read that book cover to cover, and it absolutely changed my life. I had that moment of clarity and epiphany that so many Baptists had told me they had when they got saved that I never really quite had. But I had that when I read that truth, because Cayce speaks about reincarnation, about the laws of karma, and he writes from a perspective that I could relate to, because he was a Christian Protestant, and what his own readings were telling him was different, particularly in the sense of reincarnation. And so at that moment, I knew I had finally found the answers. And so literally, I was living in a country where I wasn't much interested in watching television. I lived in Brazil for 6 years. After that, I lived in Africa for 5.5 years. I went through 2 coups d'etats there, as a matter of fact, and my wife and I were rescued by the French Foreign Legion. That's a different story into itself.
Wow, yeah.
But I also lived in India and in South America, a total of 9 years, lived in Venezuela, and in fact I was there during Hugo Chavez's first attempt at a coup d'etat. And so I had a very interesting life in terms of always being a foreigner, never really being in English-speaking countries. Mm-hmm. And during that time, I read metaphysical books. I literally would come home once a year and get a suitcase full of metaphysical books, in the beginning from the ARE, the Association of Research and Enlightenment, which is the Edgar Cayce Foundation. And I would read instead of watch television. Mm-hmm. And at one point, over 33 years, I think I had read every single book that the ARE bookstore had available. And so it was a perfect training, not just in my ability to focus on metaphysical readings, but also in my ability to become a citizen of the world, to be in other cultures, to learn other languages, and to be forced to learn how to communicate nonverbally. And what I mean by that is, very often, if you're in a foreign country, and I always looked like an American. I'm 6'5" and 250 pounds, so I didn't easily pass for a Brazilian. Mm-hmm. And so I would look at the face of a taxi driver to make sure that this was an honest person that I could count on getting to the hotel that I was going to safely. But being able to, be in other cultures and to learn how to speak foreign languages and learn other cultures was very valuable. But during those 33 years of working, I never worked in the United States, and I was able to visit so many different places, and I became interested from a geological standpoint in sacred sites, power nodes, places like the Egyptian pyramids, Stonehenge, the pyramid locations in Mexico. I began to look at what defined a sacred site. Why was a sacred site chosen in the first place? And I used my geological knowledge to look at the mineral content, to see what minerals were present in these locations. And so that became the basis for my first book.
It's fascinating, and we will talk more about those sacred sites, but I just want to say, I have felt for a long time that all of our high school students and college students or young adults should get overseas. I myself lived overseas. It did change my world. It changed my perspective most of all. And here you are living in many different countries where, not being able to speak that language, you had to go by reading the energy of a person as well. When you came back to the States, living in the mainland, did you have what I call reverse culture shock?
I did indeed. And I came back with absolutely different viewpoints of the United States and of different situations, and I basically I had broadened my horizons to be that of a citizen of the world. And it really is unfortunate that so many people in the United States don't have the opportunity to truly travel the world. And not just in the perspective of languages, but just in the ability to see the world. There is so many absolutely beautiful places on the planet. And one of the questions that I get asked often is, particularly in regards to power sites, and in regards to the 88 countries that I've visited, what is my favorite place? And it's really an unfair question. There are so many. I mean, how do you compare absolutely beautiful places that are completely different? For example, the Grand Canyon is one of the most stunningly beautiful places on the planet. I've had the opportunity to raft the entire length of the Grand Canyon 3 different times, which is over 240 miles, and it is unbelievable. But how do you compare that, say, to Banff, Canada, or to the Highlands of Scotland? They're completely different expressions of Mother Earth, of Gaia. But what I found in common with a lot of these places is the energy. There are certain places on the planet that have energy signatures that are quite different. But the commonality is there is a higher concentration of what I refer to as life force. There are places on the planet where, if you can imagine, life force is like a fertilizer, that concentration of life force, or to use a Metatronic term, consciousness units, are far more concentrated. It's like watching a television in regular screen and then going to a television in high definition. There are more pixels, if you will, of life force in certain places. And another example of this could be Lake Titicaca in Bolivia, Island of the Sun, Las Torres del Paine in Tierra del Fuego, Patagonia. These places you go to, and you immediately get this sense of richness. It's almost like there are starbursts occurring in one's field of vision, and everything just seems more vivid. And that is one of the examples of how, it's often said that the entire earth is sacred, and yes, that's true, but there are variations in the concentration of life force in certain places, and there are different reasons for that.
You talked earlier about the mineral content. What did you discover? So places like Machu Picchu, what is going on there?
Yeah, there's a tremendous amount of granite, and granite is one of the most powerful rocks on the planet. And granite is made up of three minerals: quartz, feldspar, and mica. Mica is another crystal that a lot of people don't acknowledge. Mm-hmm. But quartz is a very, very powerful mineral in the sense that it has some unique attributes. It has the ability to emit an electromagnetic field. Quartz has the ability to transmit, to receive, and also to amplify energies. The reason your telephone works is because there's a quartz element in it. The reason your watch works in most cases is that there is a quartz element inside it. The reason computers store data is because they have taken the base component of quartz, which is silicon. Quartz is silicon dioxide, and they have found that silicon can be used to store information. And so quartz is an extremely telltale contributor to certain powerful places on the planet. And so in terms of minerals, I would look for certain things. Quartz, and not necessarily just natural quartz by itself, but quartz within granite. Granite contains what is called pegmatites, which are these stripes or these strands of crystallized material. Generally, it's quartz, but it can also contain topaz. It can also contain tourmaline and a variety of other crystalline elements. And so when something is crystalline, and this is important, when any mineral is crystalline, it puts out a very pure and clear field of energy. And now, there are three types of rocks. There are sedimentary rocks, which is sand, sandstone, limestone, basically a type of rock that formed from the seabeds. Then there is igneous rocks, which is volcanic rocks, lava, basalt. Granite is igneous rock. And then there's this fantastic third type called metamorphic type. And it simply means it's one of the other two types of rock that has gone through a metamorphosis. Because of time and pressure, it has absolutely morphed into a crystalline nature. And so anytime we find metamorphic rock in a location, there is an extremely powerful energy field being emitted. For example, give you another example of a metamorphic crystal. Charcoal or carbon occurs, as lignite, as degraded biological material. But when carbon is metamorphosized and crystallized, it becomes diamond. And so, in a sense, the metamorphosis of rock is a similar analogy to the metamorphosis humans go through in their various lifetimes through time and pressure to the pressure of cause and effect, the pressure of learning, of seeking the light, that we and ourselves become crystals, you might say. And so I would always look for these signs. Noble metals such as silver, such as gold, are very, very unique, and they offer tremendous benefits as well, and they change the energy of certain locations. There have been studies conducted by various universities that talks about, and this is significant, the ratio difference that occurs in certain areas. Now, the normal background in our environment, in our atmosphere, is that there is an anionic or negative ionic charge with a ratio of cationic or positive ionic charges of 5 to 3. 5 negative to the 3 positive. And I don't really like to use negative and positive because it is actually the negative charge or the anionic charge that is more beneficial for the human auric field, which is also an electromagnetic field that is changing to a crystalline electric field. But when that ratio is shifted, and this was first brought to my knowledge in a book called Sacred Sites of the West, written by an educator from California by the name of Bernice Barlow. And she quoted that the University, I believe, of Southern California had been doing studies where they measured the ionic charge in areas that the Native Americans considered holy. And they found that there was a difference in the anionic ratio. It was no longer 5 to 3, but it had shifted one way or the other dramatically. And the reason for that shift is the mineralogical signature of the area. Now, what the study had shown was that when the shift in the anionic ratio was changed drastically, such as 6 to 1 anionic to ionic, in laboratory conditions, people would have out-of-body experiences. People would have hallucinatory, in the academic terms, experiences similar to psychotropic drug actions. And so the conclusion that the academics at the university made is that these out-of-body experiences are therefore not real because they're being induced simply by electromagnetic field ratios. My conclusion, on the other hand, with that same data, is that the Native Americans, the indigenous peoples, the campestral societies that had an awareness of the earth knew where special places on the earth were and knew that they could absolutely reach higher states of consciousness within these areas. It is, for example, the magnetic vortexial energies of places like Mount Shasta in California that are capable of creating wormholes through space, simply because, and specifically because of their dynamic electromagnetic background.
For the entire conversation, visit acoustichealth.com and click on Radio Show and register for the 24-show series of healing conversations. I now leave you with music from the universe, literally created by the universe, as musical composer Phil Windsor assigned musical notes to mathematical equations, and the result is this beautiful music. Visit acoustichealth.com.